Hi, everyone. Today is Wednesday, November the 25th of 2020, and it's time for Rudy's Psychic Meetup. Hey, Rudy, what do you have on the go for tonight?
Well, just a couple topics for tonight. We're going to do some Medium 101 and talk about downloads and how that fits into the types of knowings and, that whole list of things that we get from the other side. And then we're also going to take a look at an alien abduction that happened here in my home state of Arizona. So this came after the David Pilates thing. Somebody asked if we had looked at this one. So I thought, well, this will be a great one to look into. And then we'll go to questions. So happy early Thanksgiving, everyone, for those of you in the U.S. It's the start of our holiday season. And let's just jump right into it. All right. Well, the first topic is downloads. So I wanted to bring this topic up because it's a term that I'm hearing people use more and more often. And we got a couple folks in the Discord that use it. And I thought, let's maybe take a look at this and see if it's different than things we've talked about before with kind of a knowing or some of the clairvisual things that you see, clairvoyance. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on this term download and see how it fits into what you experience. So I asked a few folks who have used this term before, and Lost Shaker was kind enough to give me a good explanation. And I'll read that first, and then we'll kind of talk about the different things. But he writes, a download is similar to a knowing, but contains more information. I often recognize a download because it's more elusive, and I'll remember one or two things, but know there's information slipping away. I think of it in terms of a spectrum. You have a knowing, and download is kind of in the middle, and then clairvoyance, clairaudience, that's the full-on mediumship thing. So there may be a visual component to a download. It's like a stream of information will be flowing, but it's difficult for the human mind to collect all of it. Kind of like you said that when someone's going past you in a car, and what kind of soda were they drinking, what color was their hair, right?
Male or female, how many people were in the car? There's a lot of information you have to translate, and it's not the same as the English language. I think that when we say we see stuff, that people are imagining that we see stuff. And, and sometimes we do, to be fair. I mean, I do actually see, like when somebody was being connected with a father-in-law that had passed away, I talked about the sweater, that he was always wearing this big sweater. And I was like, and that was the joke between them, though. So if they could pick anything, it would have been the fact that he wore a sweater around the house. And you know what I'm talking about, right? The sweater with the collar, and it's nice and thick, and it has like maybe some like trees on it.
The old man sweater. Right?
That's right, the old man sweater. And I was like, and they were like, oh, that's but it's like, it's something that stands out about them. That's what it's all about.
And so with the downloads, and he also says, it may have kind of a feeling of enlightenment afterwards, a download. And so you've talked about, when you're getting information from the other side, sometimes you're getting like pictures, but sometimes you'll get that video screen or you'll see a video clip. So how would you characterize a download in terms of how you experience the other side?
Okay, so there's a few different ways. And I'm glad you asked this question because I was actually thinking about that today, how I was talking about stellar lumens. And to my daughter, I was like, I was trying to figure out the price. I had remember my bag of stellar wasn't full. And then I was like, oh my God, I don't have my full bag of stellar. And it was like, it had fallen to 4 cents and something earlier this year. So I upped my bag by 40% and filled my bag with stellar. I was like, oh, I was such a dummy. How could I allow that to happen? Right? But it was just one of those, all of a sudden, it's almost like a lightning bolt, a download of information, a knowing, it's true. It's like, if you get stellar right now at 4 cents, that's going to be the best price right now. You need to get that done because it's going up. Right. So it was like that immediate. Now, other things are like the sweater example I gave you. They visually show me. So I see them, but it's in my mind's eye. But then I've talked to you about seeing sort of a video camera. That's like in 3D. That's like you watching television or the young woman's voice going, stellar lumens. Yeah. In my right ear on October the 17th, where actually I pulled out the comment where I had gone on to YouTube and asked people in the crypto area, if they knew anything about stellar lumens. And that was because in real time, just like when my son, one of the first clues I had that my son was probably like me as well, And I didn't think that was going to happen because I already knew my daughter was. And I was like, what are the statistical odds that both of the only two children I have would both have second sight? And it was like in 3D, seeing the ghost dog and then having my son go, ooh, ghost dog, when he's like 4 years old. And I'm like, oh my God, he sees that too. But normally I wouldn't see stuff in what I call 3D, right? That example I gave before about the clairvoyant who wrote the book that says, Dykeshorn. He wrote the book that says, my passport says clairvoyant. If you guys haven't read it and you are interested in second sight and what goes on in the mind of a medium, that is an awesome example of it. Yes, right on. So when I was reading that book to my son, talking to him about it, I had Dykeshorn, his profile. He was just standing against the wall to my right, and my son was to my left, and we were sitting on the bed. And I didn't say anything to him. I saw that Dykeshorn was there, and then my son goes, "Hey, Mom, you know that man that we're reading, who wrote that book that we're reading about? Well, he's standing right against the wall." I was like, "Yes, I was like, yes, honey, I know." And I know I've told people that story before, but we do have a lot of new people here, and I do want to use that as an example, as something that is in the 3D. These things were in the 3D. If you sat there with your own eyes and you looked to your right, you would have seen the outline of Dykeshorn standing there in like real, it wasn't pretend. The girl, the lady, Sharon, actually, she was one of my earlier readings, and that was one of the first times that the sky opened. Yeah. And it, like, wherever I looked, instead of seeing like the wall or the ceiling or what have you, I'd see almost like this raggedy cutout of the video of what it looked like looking out her front window. Right. Because that's what stood out. It's like, you have a fence, like you can't even see your road. You know, something that maybe also might have been on her mind and on her mind recently. Okay. That's the other thing too, right? Yeah. So it's like in 3D, just like we saw the outline of Dykeshorn, you can see stuff where you're like looking with your eyes and you're trying to squint, you're trying to like, you're like, am I really seeing this? But it's like, instead of, and you'll turn your head too, and it'll move. You may not know that as well. Like it'll move. And it's like, it's outlined by black, like just a little black sort of.
You can't see through it? Is it like solid? Like you couldn't?
Yeah, it's solid. Okay. But the ghost dog, remember I talked about the ghost dog, you could see through that. Okay, but the other side, it was distorted.
And what about Dykeshorn? Was that distorted too, or was that?
No, he was like, I could see.
And you know, that's what Lost said. He had a good sentence here. He said, "Knowings are really simple and tend to be about one thing. Like, I should avoid this guy," or you know, he said the president won. So they're kind of one where that download is like, it's like you said, a zap of information. It may have some residual images where you kind of like have some pictures in your mind and you get additional information. You know, I tend to think of downloads like, you know, from the Matrix where Neo, you know, now I know Kung Fu, right? Yeah. But it's not like you would know everything about Kung Fu. So, okay, it's interesting because, you know, it's people are getting information different ways. And I thought that would help kind of clarify how they're getting this information. Okay. What about, dreams? Like, you know, people will say they got a download in a dream. I've heard people say that on YouTube before. You know, I don't tend to think of downloads as coming in dreams. I really see a dream as, hey, maybe you have a dream, maybe you're shown an image in a dream, but I wouldn't think of a dream as a place where you would get a download. What do you think about that?
Isn't that interesting that you ask about that today? Because I was just talking about it with my daughter. Because again, for those who don't know, because we have a lot of new people here, she's a medium. I train her and my son because they're both, you know, after it was like when he's like, ooh, ghost dog. And then telling me, I was like, okay, he's medium too. This is going to get exhausting, I think. I better learn my stuff. I better know what I'm doing if I have to teach my children about this and how to do a better job than what I've done. Because I want them, I'm doing a good job right now. There's so much I can go into about it, but I think the blab might take too long. Okay. So why don't we go into the questions and then maybe we'll circle back to it and then.
Okay, yeah, that's what funny. Steve says, or somebody put in there, nice segue to my question, or Scott said that. All right, do you want to go? Let's look at let's take a look at this abduction fire in the sky first, and then we'll go into the questions. If we got a few minutes. let's see. So this was a story. Somebody suggested that we go into this after last meetup, and it's the story of somebody. And if you've ever been around ufology, or as you get, first step into the woo-woo, there's some standard UFO stories everybody knows about, Betty and Barney Hill, this one, Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky. And these are stories where multiple witnesses, their story remains consistent over time, and people, it's still, very much a mystery. So this one was a famous one. It happened to Travis Walton in 1975. So this was November 5th, 1975. Walton was part of a 7-man logging crew in the Apache Sitgraves National Forest near Heber, Arizona. So if you're not familiar with Arizona, it's kind of this eastern part. It bumps up against New Mexico and runs through the state there. And so as they were leaving, they saw a bright light off to their right. And when they got closer, they saw a bright saucer-shaped UFO hovering about 20 feet over a clearing, making a high-pitched buzz. So Walton was the only one to get out of the truck to investigate, and he said, "I was awestruck and entranced by the beauty of the thing. I thought it would take off, but it didn't, and I didn't appreciate the danger I was in." And Walton claimed that after he left the truck, a beam of light suddenly appeared from the craft and knocked him unconscious. The other 6 men were frightened and supposedly drove away. Walton claimed he awoke in a hospital-like room being observed by 3 short, bald creatures. He claimed that he fought with them until a human wearing a helmet led him to another room where he blacked out, and 3 other humans put a clear mask over his face. He claims he remembers nothing else until he found himself walking along a highway 5 days later. So, some people are skeptical about this. But, Sam, what do you think, when I tell you about this story, what do you think actually happened there?
Well, isn't that interesting that story? I actually did watch it, Fire in the Sky, and that was before I became a working medium. Like, maybe I was very young when Fire in the Sky came out. Again, going back to my age, I would have been old enough. I would have been allowed to watch Fire in the Sky. So I do recall seeing it, and actually I saw it on television, and I watched this show, and I got impressions. Now as a medium, when you guys send me videos and everything, I get the impressions right away about what the truth is, and I know, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the right answer. And it's only because, like, time after time, I've been proven right.
Yeah.
So now looking back at that movie that I watched, Fire in the Sky, I remember thinking that this guy was being truthful and that he had been taken by the aliens that I call the scientists.
Okay.
And I always tell people, I'm like, you know what? If you get taken by the scientists, like, that's what you hope for, because they only just want samples and then they'll let you go. I mean, their whole attitude is do no harm. They have even tried to create human-like beings to sort of escort, so that you would at least feel comfortable and not be so freaked out, because they're like, we're freaking them out because of how we look.
Yeah.
And they're not used to things that don't look like them having any intelligence. So let's see if we can create. But with these things, they have no souls, right? Okay. Like they're humanoid, quote unquote, but they're not people. They're not like you or me. They're just like we would create a robot, but they can do it with organic matter.
Okay. And that, of course, was my next question, was about were they humans or not. But Sam, do you think he was chosen for a reason, or do you think he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? Because sometimes they'll come back for people over and over again, but this seemed to be a one-time deal. And my thought was, when I was writing this question, was like, oh, he just stumbled upon him. And they're like, hey, there's one, let's get him, right?
Yes, the people that they come back for over and over again, like I said, they're the scientists. Okay. So if they grab somebody, usually the people that they come back to get over and over again, I'm going to bet you anything, even though I don't look into UFO stories and stuff. Because, I mean, I've been way too busy with cryptos as a medium. I don't have even time to investigate what it is that I am. So just keep throwing the questions at me, and I guess I'll figure it out. But, in regards to that, the people who claim to have abductions over and over again, many of them, I believe them, especially if they say that they remember it from a young age, because that would be a big part of their study, is to follow people over their lifespan.
Okay. Yeah, because out in that area, I was thinking, well, they might be going after animals, and then here comes this logging crew, and they grab this guy. I'll hold up a picture here if you have a chance. So they described this ship being taken into almost like a bigger ship, and then he was taken down a hallway to a room, and that was him as they revisited the site a few years ago. So as I show you this picture, Sam, I don't know if there's any additional info you get, but I thought it was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I don't get any more additional information other than what, they told me when they were telling me the story. And I was like, oh, that's quite amazing. I believed it to be the truth, even though, I wasn't into UFOs one way or the other. I've never personally seen a UFO, and the only alien I've seen has been in my mediumistic mind's eye.
All right, let's go to the next question. Hummingbird writes, "Hi, Sam and Rudy. There are some people that say their psychic skills started as a result of a physical accident of some type. Is this true? Is this true? And what is triggered in the brain to open up this psychic channel? Thanks to both of you, and happy Thanksgiving."
Well, I think that you have it all along. What you have is a catalytic event that moves it along. I mean, I definitely am much better with my abilities than I was, 15 years ago.
Okay.
And for me, I had that incident at the mall where that girl fell down right in front of my face, and I knew at least 10 seconds before it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that was when I realized that the people talking to me, that was in my imagination. And that once you come to that realization that you can actually speak to people on the other side and how it's done, it's almost like the water moment.
Mm-hmm.
And those who know sign language know I just did water. 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 And actually with Helen Keller, that was the first word that she realized that the sign language, and it was actually on her palm, so they didn't make her do like that. There's a sign language that is on the palms,
right? So
that was what her teacher Andy Sullivan did, is she ran her hands under one of those pumps with the water, and then she would do water, and then finally, but she did that all along, but it was when she did water that Helen Keller realized and connected the two. Right. So the translation, it was always there. The sign language was always there. It was when Helen Keller had her hands underwater and Andy Sullivan did water, and then she realized, she connected, and then she started running around and touching things, and then she would put her hands out. Tell me what that is. Right? So she understood, and then that just opened an entire world to her. And that is what happens when you're a medium. You have that aha moment, and then you all of a sudden you get it. And it's like riding a bicycle. It's like the longer you ride, think about somebody who does intense mountain biking. That would be the type of medium I am. Somebody who's doing intense downhill mountain biking racing, but you start with learning how to pedal a bike.
Yeah. And we covered this topic. We had some examples, I think it was earlier this year, and I'm trying to remember exactly what we said from this, but if there is a traumatic brain injury, something that happens, do you think in that healing process and the way the brain is rewiring itself or healing itself, that also can play into any of the abilities awakening, just that your brain might be working differently?
I think that sometimes you just change your mind about things.
Okay.
And you have maybe that time, you have to look at more of the circumstances when you have a brain injury.
Okay.
Now you have, your job is, you're not doing your job anymore. You're probably not doing regular household duties.
Yeah.
That's why, setting up the Patreon was really important to me, because, working full time as a creator, you cannot underestimate the value that it brings to somebody who has abilities like this when you don't have to sort of do all of the regular workaday stuff, because the less your mind is full of these things, the more you can excel in your abilities. And when you have them and you're supposed to be using them, this format to practice and be around people, and like even people like throwing once in a while I miss in the general chat, I'll miss the Q&A for Sam just because there's too much that comes in, but I try to get as much as I can because I know that the practice is awesome for me, as far as honing my abilities and making things a little bit easier for people to deal with.
Yeah. All right. Steve O writes, "Hey, Samantha and Rudy, Saturday, November 21st, 9:28 p.m. Melbourne time. I got this download. I guess I would like your opinion. My download to me was, what do you think your guides are doing? I thought, I don't know. They are helping you, but also learning human stuff as well for when they come back as human. Okay, so it's like they're learning as well. Never knew that. Does that resonate with you? What do you think about that, Sam? I think my father came past. Appreciate it. Thanks."
Well, I mean, in the past, when I've talked about spirit guides, I mentioned to people that normally they're not people who've ever lived here on the Earth realm. So I think that it's not because they're going to live here. It's probably because they don't know what it's like to live here, right? So just like I said, you can see from the question he's asking and what he's learned from them that there's just a little bit of a it was like, well, this is what they probably were actually saying, because most spirit guides now, I have had humans, people who are like us, who are light beings, who spent time here on the Earth realm, who have stepped forward and sort of volunteered as people that I don't know personally, but for some reason they have a stake in what's going on, which I would talk about more later on. But I don't want to get too complicated other than to say that the majority of time, spirit guides, they are not human light beings, or they've never lived on the Earth realm, but there are exceptions. So you can still have your tribe, strongly involved with you. Spirit guides are the individuals that would talk to people like me, or who would they protect me, or they would protect like Barefoot Dog while she's doing her healing. Yeah. Because she's going to get attacks as well because she's doing good for humanity. She's going up into the ethos. She's going across, and it's when you're up in the ethos and going across, that's when you need that protection, and that's what spirit guides do. They protect you.
And that's a really interesting idea because, you think about it, if they haven't lived that human experience, you're so often we're dealing with things in this human realm, this 3D realm. And while they're helping you without that context, I guess there would be some education there. So maybe that explains some of the fogginess sometimes in the messages that come through, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Winter says, we're all, we're here learning, and he has questions about the information that he's getting. And I will certainly do my best to, go up and just like stuff I don't know anything about, like his experiences. I don't know anything about those. But when you're reading the question, then I can, start to sort of fall into it. And then I can look to the people on the other side and go, what say you, right? Tell me, what say you? Because I don't know, Jack, nothing really. I mean, I'm just like a regular person, like most of y'all.
All right. Coordinate Ninja writes, "Hi, guys. Is there any truth to the theory of COVID-19 sickness is actually 5G poisoning, and Trump has changed the frequency to start healing the current damage to human tissue? Thanks for all you do."
No. Whoever posted that, none of that is true. And I haven't a clue. I'm too busy. I don't have a clue about any of this stuff. If you guys didn't ask it, I would have no idea. Like, I didn't even know about the reptile people. I felt like a total idiot. I was like, what? There's reptiles living in the middle of the planet, and they're like, I'm working in high-end government. And it's like, of course, that's all not true. But I had no idea that this was something being spun until you guys brought it forward. So I'm thankful. So I wasn't blindsided with this craziness. I was able to find out about it from you guys and look into it.
Yeah, and I recall before you saying 5G isn't harmful. I mean, that's we hear that a lot. It's a great one to get. I think what do you call it? Exposure to any high radiation field of energy is probably not good, but the way we're using it isn't really going to hurt people. So no. In fact, the people who don't have high-speed internet even
are suffering.
Raymond writes, he links to an article, but it says the article suggests that the childhood home of Jesus was found. I have doubts about this because every time a new home or building is discovered from the first century, they often attribute it to Jesus. It also suggests that Jesus was a stonemason as opposed to being a carpenter. Is there any validity to the story? Thanks. So, Sam, do you think they've found Jesus' childhood home or unearthed it already?
I agree with what they're saying about anything from the first century. They try to attribute it to Jesus because, that brings in, it's all about the money, right?
Yeah, tourism just popped into my head, right?
Yeah, tourism. You're right. You got it. It's all about the tourism. But I do think that not only could he build stuff with, as a carpenter, but he was also a stonemason because, again, you couldn't get full-time work as a carpenter. You had to be a jack of all trades kind of thing.
Okay. Daniel has an interesting question here. I don't know if this will be the right place for it, but there's a missing man, an Alzheimer man in Singapore, and they have an article on him. He has dementia and a Google Maps. But Sam, have you ever thought about trying to locate missing people like that? What would you think? Is post it in the Discord? Would you want to?
Well, see, there's that again is something that people who have abilities like I do, if they can learn how to use them, they can help in their own local area. So by us doing what we're doing, we're disseminating information to all of these people who are part of not only the root race, but would have been mediums anyways. Yeah. There's people who would have been mediums anyways, but there's people that are mediums because now it's being triggered that pretty much 100% of the people in their genealogy, well, my children will probably have 100% medium children.
Okay.
That's what it's coming down to, is that a large percentage, about 30% eventually of the population, because it's a dominant trait. If 2 out of 2, both my kids are mediums, then, my daughter, she's a medium every bit as much as I am.
You have to remind your grandkids to be nice, otherwise you'll be mean to them when you're gone, right? You'll be coming back and harassing them. All right. Alex S. writes, why are there doppelgangers? Why should there be copies of someone if there are infinite possibilities? Almost as if it was an experiment. Make a copy of someone, send them to different parts of the globe, and wait until they meet and start arguing about who's the real one.
Yeah. Well, of course, none of that is true. Again, this is all about the talking heads. It's all about the money, just like people claiming that this was Jesus's home. It's all about the money. And it's the same reason that a lot of these people they just make up stories. I was talking to my daughter today about the fact that no matter what, I said, I said they could take down everything I've ever posted and then I would just create new material.
Yeah.
Because there's always stuff going on in the world, and it's not like I'm a 1 off or a 2 off or a 3 off. It's whatever's going on, I'll figure out. I'll get in there like a dirty shirt and I'll figure out what's going on, and then I'll spill it because I just can't help it. I blab.
And we did mention doppelgangers and people who've looked like historical people in one of the other meetups. And I think one of the questions was, is it because there's only so many combinations to make up humans? And I think you were getting a yes on that. So, yeah, that is. It's
a statistical anomaly that happens. So, and that's why, I had so many people who I would go and see over the years who would say to their spouse when I was talking to them, oh, doesn't she remind you of so-and-so? Blah, blah, sister, right? So often. And it would be I either looked like them or I acted like them. I had a personality, my mannerisms, what have you. So these things happen. It's just a statistical anomaly. Now, the odds of you getting somebody who looks the same as they act and sound is pretty small.
And then Alex S. writes, thought experiment. Let's assume that there exist people with copper-based blood instead of iron-based. Let's call them blue bloods. This would theoretically allow them to live in oxygen-deprived environments. i.e. high in the mountains, because presumably copper allows oxygen to be absorbed more effectively. Sea dwellers have blue blood, but how many humans? Would those people even be considered human? How big of a role, if any, does red blood play in making us psychic?
I don't think that the blood has anything to do with it. It's all in the brain, and it's carried through the DNA. So it's in the makeup of your brain, carried through the DNA. So they do use, it is used, like a human body has to be set up a certain way to be a medium, is my understanding.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's causation, like you might have more certain metals in your blood if you live at a higher elevation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's more causation. And also people, having children and stuff, it's just all about adaptation as well. I live in a colder climate than what some people do. Okay. So they're probably like, oh, Burr, it must be colder. I was like, you know what? It doesn't bother me. I don't notice it because it's what I'm acclimatized to. It's what I'm used to. Well, how much more people who actually live and have children at the higher altitudes in the world. I mean, it just makes sense that, the reason why humans have survived all this time is because we are very adaptable.
Yeah. All right. Steve M says, hi, guys. You're both doing an awesome job. Thanks, Steve M. Several times, E. Howard Hunt bragged about being a CIA assassin who was instrumental in the JFK assassination. Is there any truth to this, or was he full of it?
Mm-hmm. Well, he is full of it. One of the things that my husband has said to me a lot about, these tough guys, he said, I've known a lot of tough guys in my life, and none of them ever had to tell you they were a tough guy, right? You would just see a situation come up, and then they would be the tough guy. But you had no idea that they could manage themselves like that because they never talked about it, right? And that's what he said, and that's very interesting that, this guy talks about being a CIA assassin. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, if I ever assassinated anybody, you wouldn't be hearing it out of my lips.
Scott writes, Sam, do you spend any time in quiet meditation, and what effect does it have on the psychic phenomenon? I've heard Dick Algeier of Remote Viewing fame say that his mentor advises that being in a fasting state in a sensory-deprived room would really accentuate his sensation or his session.
Well, I don't know about regular people like Dick Algeier. I can only talk about me. And the minute that I sort of bow my head and start sort of getting in or trying to change my vibration, it literally becomes so unmanageable. The feeling, the pressure on I'm just like, oh, I don't even feel like I'm a real person right now. I'm kind of my vibrate. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to turn this off because I don't need this to get the information that I'm getting. So, and I think I've mentioned it to people before. They're like, oh, do you meditate? And I'm just like, oh no, man. I don't even know what'll happen. I try, but then it's just like, oh, put on the brakes. It's like, I'm not ready to fly the jet yet. It's just, okay, I'm good. I'm good with what's going on so far.
Maybe one day, but you don't need to right now. Yeah.
You know what? Not right now with what we're doing. I got another 2 years of doing this, and I don't want to be any kind of guru leader thing going on. Just I'll drop F-bombs if I have to. No, we're just talking about cryptos, and I'm trying to relax everybody that, if you're American, everything is going to be okay. Don't worry about it. If you're in the UK, things are going to get crappy for a little bit, but it's fine. You guys will come out of it. Same as Australia. If you live in Europe, freaking run for your life. I wouldn't even stay there. No. But you can go back later on.
Scott says, I use an antivirus, Kaspersky, which tells me when my webcam is activated. You'd be surprised how often the cam is turned on by a site you visited, often Google or YouTube. Are any of these camera activations related to attempts at building ID and facial databases for nefarious purposes?
No. It is a bunch of useless information that, we might be able to use. It's also not widely known or used. So it may be more like, instead of it being, let's say, IBM doing it, because they would never do something like that as a corporation.
All right. Drillinfeld says, "Hi guys, do we really live in a very sophisticated virtual reality? Speed of light is constant regardless of circumstances, as if it was light from the outside world coming in. Thanks, guys."
Yeah, we do actually. That was something that had crossed my mind before, was, how what we're living now is just a manufactured reality, where we're sort of earning our stripes.
Okay.
I mean, it is real, like when you burn your hand on the stove, when you open it up and all the steam comes in and makes your glasses foggy. I mean, this is all real stuff that's happening. It's just that when you pass over and then things are real, it's almost like Technicolor real. It's like, it's very real.
Okay. Yeah, I think we were talking last week about time, and this is a unique thing to have in our 3D reality. So, yeah, an interesting way to experience things. All right, Lost Shaker writes, "Sam, you mentioned that the scientists are the aliens. Are the aliens one wanted to be taken by? Who are the aliens we don't want to be abducted by?" What would you call them?
The ones that are the warring ones. The ones, the soldiers. So there's different groups, and one of them are the scientists, and then there's the aliens that are the soldiers. Those are the ones you don't want.
Okay. Brenda writes, "Hi, Sam and Rudy. I.e. aliens. 33 years ago, I woke up and aliens were putting implants in me, my daughter, and my baby I was pregnant with. When they touched my daughter, I tried to get them away from her. I was paralyzed. They telepathically told me I agreed to do this. Were they good ones? I did not remember signing up for that." Interesting. Sam.
Well, remember when I talked about, when you were a child and grabbed early on, she may not have remembered that.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing too is that that may also be what they have been told by their higher beings, because you know how our government lies to us and gets us to go to war and stuff. Yeah, well, that would happen too to some of these side. Okay, you're on shift now. Yeah, they've all agreed to it. Just go in and do it. Well, I don't really feel good about that. Yeah, you know what? They've agreed to it. They just don't remember it. It's all good for science. We have to monitor these humans and make sure that they're not getting too poisoned and all this stuff, whatever it is they're doing.
It's like cops are allowed to lie to you, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that's been in the woo world, that there's this theory that anything that happens, we've agreed to the experience beforehand, as if you've already consented. So, yeah, interesting. All right. And final question of the evening. Julie says, "Hi, Sam. Will we be forced to have a vaccine shot to be able to fly internationally? Thanks."
No, they won't even have enough vaccinations for all of the vulnerable people. The first people they're going to give it to are going to be the healthcare workers, of course, and then the vulnerable people who, they have to make sure that they get it. Okay.
All right.
Bye for
Thanks,
now.
everyone. Good night.